What's happening inside the Harris campaign right now?
What is happening in real time is that they are on the phones. You better believe that.
Who are they calling?
They're calling donors. They're absolutely calling party insiders, and they're calling delegates.
And the ask is to give money and give us your vote?
The ask is for support, right? If you're talking to a donor, obviously money is important, but it's really their support. I mean, where we are now, in large part, was a full court press, I would say, by party insiders and donors as to how we got here, right? And so obviously she's making phone calls to them. And some of them, you know, in terms of the donor community, these are somewhat new relationships that she's got to be able to foster in a very short time. And so she's going to lean on her friends, right? She's going to lean on Biden. She's going to lean on the Clintons. She's going to lean on Obama to help her really bring those people to her and to support her.
Do you expect any other Democrats to put their name in for the nomination, or does Kamala Harris have this locked up?
Listen, one thing that I am not going to do is to try to predict anything, but what I will say to you is that Harris is in the strongest position possible. I would be very surprised. I mean, I can't think of anyone who could even come close to the strength of Harris right now, having been this close to the incumbent, right? Being this close to the now president. And so she's able to point to wins, and she's able to distance herself from the things that perhaps the administration hasn't done so well.
Well, let's talk about some of those things. I mean, the first thing that comes to mind that Republicans attack her on is the border. She was appointed border czar early on, and the numbers are going down right now, but it's still been a problem for this state and for all border states.
And you know, exactly, and that's something that, you know, in this country we've dealt with, right, for decades. And so the fact that as the vice president, she actually took on that problem, what that tells me is that she's not afraid to really tackle the tough issues in this country. And that's very honorable, because these are issues that we know we have dealt with forever in this country.
You're very connected, Jane. What are people texting you about? What are they asking? What are they saying?
You know, it's very interesting. Donors seem to not necessarily be aligned inside of their own circles. But what I'm hearing from key Democratic leaders and delegates, you know, our super delegates, is that they're going to be behind Harris.
But the donors aren't necessarily aligned?
I would say no. And you know, my message to them would be, get on board. We're going to be with Harris. Kamala Harris is going to be our presidential nominee. So
but she can't run without money, though.
She can't run without money, and so that's what a lot of key insiders and party affiliates and party insiders and grassroots people like myself, who have really been in the trenches for 20-something years. Our message to donors is, look, we are getting behind Kamala Harris, and I'm using donors in a very general term, right? But in terms of where there may be misalignment, I would say it is in the donor community. But our message is clear. We are behind Kamala Harris to be our presidential nominee, and we're moving forward.
What's it going to take to get donors on board, do you think, to get them, in a general sense, all behind her?
I think, we have to remember that, insiders weren't really with Kamala Harris as the VP choice, right? I'm sure you remember that during those campaign days. And I would say a lot of it is that these are relationships that Kamala Harris is going to have to cultivate for herself. So she's going to have to call on her allies to help get her in the room, get her on the phone. And I'm very confident that once the donor community really gets to know her better, they'll see that it's a clear choice. I mean, if you think about Trump as a criminal, which factually he is a criminal, he's now up against a prosecutor, a former AG, a former district attorney. This is his worst nightmare. I can't think of anyone else that is better suited to stand on that debate stage and take him to task. So I am feeling like the Democrats are in a very strong position.
You think so?
Absolutely. And all we need to do now is line up. And that is something that's a little hard for Democrats to do, as we know. I mean, we are as diverse as this country, right? We do represent the diversity of America. So it's not as easy for us to get in line. But I will say this, the sooner we get in line with Harris, the better off for the party and the better off for this country.
Let me go back to something I asked you a moment ago, and that is, early on, in the first few hours after this happened, I was surprised at talking to 3 different Democrats who are officials and former officials, that they didn't immediately fall behind Harris. And they said, listen, this could be open. You might have a number of people who are looking at this. Do you think that's going to happen at all? Are people talking to their families right now wondering if they should get into the race?
Look, I would have to say some of those dear people are my good friends that I've known for years. And my message is the same to them. We need to get in line. We cannot pass up Kamala Harris. And if we did, that would not only be a problem for the Democratic Party we know today, it will be a problem for this country. So just as honorable as Joe Biden, our president, made the decision to step aside, right, and endorse Kamala Harris, it's now the time for our party to follow suit.
You talked about the opportunity that Harris would have as a former prosecutor, former DA, former Attorney General for California. What are Harris's challenges, though, in the coming weeks?
It's really, you know, just getting the party to align, and that's no small task, right? She recently said she can absolutely do it. She recently said that she's going to earn the nomination. And I have no doubt that she's going to do that. I mean, she was questioned when running for DA. She was always questioned when running for Attorney General. She's been questioned in her role as the Vice President. And I do believe that Kamala Harris is very comfortable in this position. She's never been handed anything. She's had to work very hard. She's had to always have an answer for the naysayers. And every single time she rises to the task in front of her, and we're going to see that again.
Republicans obviously very litigious. What type of legal challenges do you think the Democrats might face?
Well, you know, we're always facing legal challenges, but
for this, if Kamala is the nominee, and transparency's got to be huge, is what everyone's telling me. Do you think that there are going to be legal hurdles here to jump?
You know, I really don't. I think that the party rules are as clear as they possibly can be. There are people in the back, you know, talking about scenarios of can Biden hand his delegates, you know, he's got something like 3,800 or so. Can he hand them and release them directly to Kamala Harris? In that scenario, maybe you'll see people sort of challenging that. I don't get indication like that's the way it's going to happen. So
how's it going to happen? Well,
it's an open. It'll be you know, some sort of a primary, right?
On the phone ahead of time, do you think, or is that going to happen at the convention?
Well, I think that Harris and the Biden campaign, I mean, obviously we're seeing them as a unit right now. Okay. And what's important to remember is this, is that President Biden is not just saying, I'm fully endorsing Kamala Harris. He's on the phone. He is making calls. They are working as a team. She is inheriting his machine and adding to it with the people that she has in support of her candidacy and her as a VP, as well as her presidency. So to me, if I'm looking at the Democratic Party, that's extremely strong. You've got the Clintons involved. Obviously, Obama is involved. We haven't heard from him yet, but we will be hearing from him soon very clearly. And so, again, I think that Harris is in a very strong position, and I can't think of anyone who would be able to run against her successfully. So I'm confident, and while I'm not going to take it for granted that it just goes to Kamala Harris, the vice president, she's not taking that for granted either.
A couple last questions. I want to ask about the delegates. 273 delegates in Texas. Will it be challenging to get all them on board because they were originally signing up and pledging to President Biden, and now do you think you'll have anyone tear off?
Let's be really clear. We are third in terms of the size, the sheer number of delegates. You have New York, you've got California, then you've got Texas at 273. So the game is here. Texas is a huge part of this what we're trying to do in terms of getting the count that we need for Harris. But again, this is really a mini campaign, right? If you think about it, who are the people that are going to be supportive of Harris? Getting them on the phone, getting your campaign, your mobilization ready, having people call these delegates, calling members of Congress, calling donors. So trust and believe. Right now, as we speak, there is, a full visual map for people to see. There's a war room and everybody is at work. And again, I expect for her to prevail. I have no doubt about it. No doubt.
And so does she just take over the existing infrastructure that's set up by Biden?
And add to it,
Okay.
and add to it. I definitely feel like what we are seeing from Biden, I mean, and again, I just have to say is, having been a part of his campaign to help get him elected, and I couldn't be more proud of Biden. What he's doing is admirable. It's honorable. He is a true patriot to this country. To step aside at this time after having earned these nominees, these delegates, and earned the nomination, I can't think of anything more patriotic to this country that he's doing. So hats off to him. I'm proud of him. I'm proud that he is the President of the United States, and I thank him for what he's doing in this time.
And last thing here, I expect more endorsements for Harris in the coming hours, coming days. What are you going to be watching for?
What I am going to be watching for, really, and I would say listening for, is what Jim Clyburn says. I've gotten several emails from various groups that are now having calls to say, what do we need to do to line up behind Harris? And I'm going to tell you this. I personally have not seen in recent history African-American organizations line up so quickly and mobilize so quickly. There are about 4 phone calls going on across the nation tonight in support of Harris. We are the Democratic base, and the message is clear. We will not pass Kamala Harris, and she will be the presidential nominee. And to my friends and the party insiders in the donor community, and again, they're not monolithic, but I do want to say that as the backbone of the party, African Americans definitely are looking forward to the day where we can say thank you across the Democratic Party for lining up behind Kamala Harris. And so I'm excited. I know it's going to be a success, and we're ready to get through the convention.
Can Democrats finally unite behind a candidate?
Absolutely.
Think so?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And as far as more endorsements, I mean, you're not expecting anyone else to throw their name in the nominating ring here?
Oh, I would not say that that's not going to happen. I mean,
so that could happen, but you think people will line up behind Harris?
Yeah, I mean, it could definitely happen. I don't look, and let me just say this: this is a democratic, system, right? So like, it's not the same to say, oh, there's a name out there. And it's not the same of saying, like, then that means it's, an anti-Harris movement. People are free to run in this country, right? That's why we love being Americans. You can do what you want inside of these various systems. And so, seeing someone people put their names in the hats, that wouldn't be a surprise to me. I really just look forward to continuing to see what I've started seeing, which is really mobilization for Harris. I'm very proud, absolutely, already.
Who is odds on for VP?
Yeah,
Pennsylvania?
That's been really interesting, right? We've heard Shapiro, we've heard Mark Kelly, we've heard Bashir. So, I think we have to wait and see. But
who's most strategic, though? I mean, Pennsylvania makes a lot of sense to me. Whitmer says she's not interested. Bashir would be an interesting choice, too.
I think Bashir is a really interesting choice, right? Mark Kelly, I know a lot of people really like him. He's very popular. So, that's
good resume.
Good resume. Yeah. That's yet to be seen. But I think the good news is that what I'm hearing is that that's where we're starting to focus, right? So instead of focusing on who is going to be the nominee, what we're hearing is that we're focusing on who is going to be the VP pick. And that really is where we need our party insiders and our donor community to start focusing on. Who is the VP pick?
How long until you think Harris picks a vice presidential?
Well, you know, look, it's about respecting the process, right? And so
she's got to get one thing locked up at a time.
She's got to get one thing at a time, and you know, she's got to signal that she is respecting the process.
Yeah. But is that within a week, you think, or what? We're on a timeline here, and the clock's ticking.
Yeah, I really believe that we're going to see that at the convention.
At the convention? It would go that long?
I think that when you just talk about strategy and the fact that there has to be respect for the process, right? That you can't take it for granted. Sure. That would be my assumption. I could be wrong about that, obviously.
Build suspense like Trump did.
Absolutely.
Makes sense.
Absolutely. In terms of just the backbone, you know, we've heard over the years, throughout the years, that the African Americans are the backbone of the Democratic Party. And in many ways, that's absolutely true. And so there are, you know, if you look at your timeline, you know, you definitely have detractors who say, you know, maybe some unfavorable things about Harris. But when you talk about the party and when you talk about the infrastructure of the Democratic Party, people inside the party, when we talk about these delegates, right? Because we've got to remember there's the voting public, right, which you have to make a case for. And then there's insiders, which are also delegates, because they're a part of this process. And when we think about Texas, 273 people, we're talking about delegates. There is one case to make to them, and then there's another case for the public at large. And so I think that in terms of Harris, the Biden-Harris administration, she's got a very strong record. Biden has been one of the more, I would say, transformational presidents in modern history, and she gets to really pull down on those wins and point to them. And so in terms of that 273, I think she's in a very, very strong position. In terms of general public, American public, she's got to make a case, just like any other presidential candidate would have to make, right? Which is probably different from how you speak to your base, to your inside, you know, Democratic base. But what I will say is that if I'm choosing between a criminal and an AG, or a criminal and a district attorney, or a criminal and a prosecutor, the choice is clear, right? And that's Harris. So we've got somebody who's been able to, in Harris, who's been able to say what she's going to do and point to wins and stand by her word on the truth, stand on the truth. And we've got Trump, who really has had a lot of misinformation out there, lies on top of lies. And so for me, that contrast is very easy. It gives us a very clear choice. The choice could not be clearer. So I feel very confident about Harris' ability to become president of the United States.
Let me start with the basic thing here. I've talked to a number of Democrats in the last few hours here, and they all say this is not Kamala Harris's. Let me rephrase that. The Democrats I'm talking to say Kamala Harris doesn't have this in the bag yet, that she will likely have some competition from another Democrat. How likely is that?
Look, she's the front runner. She's the vice president, and President Biden, they endorsed her. But I do believe that it's important for Democrats to have an open process, to not make it look like a couple of party leaders pick the nominee. And therefore, it should be an open process. And if Governor Newsom or Governor Whitmire or somebody else wants to run, they should be allowed to.
As far as the delegates go, if I'm a Democratic delegate and I originally, you know, was going to be committed to President Biden, and Biden's out of the race now, even though Harris is still on that ticket, can the Texas delegates go where they want now since Biden's out of the race, or are they still committed to that ticket?
Yes, they can. Legally, they can go for any candidate. They make a pledge to be for President Biden or wherever I guess he selects now, but it's not legally binding. They're totally free to vote for wherever they want.
So what do you expect we're going to see come convention time in 5 weeks?
I think at the end of the day, Vice President Harris will probably be the Democratic nominee, but I do believe there'll be some discussion, and there might be one or two candidates who will try to get delegate votes at the convention in Chicago.
And my understanding is the Chicago convention is still a little bit ceremonial because the delegate votes happen the week of August the 1st. So all this is going to have to, you know, play out here in the next 10 days, right?
That's correct. I mean, there are some influential party leaders like President Obama and Clinton that are pushing for this virtual vote before the convention to avoid any kind of convention fight. but I don't know if that's actually going to pass or go forward. The DNC members are going to have to approve that.
And that's
That's
what
still
the Rules Committee would be. The Rules Committee would work on that or
That's
consider
correct.
it?
The Rules Committee of the Democratic National Convention Committee would decide that. But I do believe they will try to probably get it forward. If I was Vice President Harris' campaign team, I would move forward with a virtual vote before the convention to avoid a messy floor fight that could divide the party.
And that's what I was going to ask you too. I was just talking to somebody here. If this goes into a floor fight and you know, the Democratic Party doesn't have time for feelings to be hurt when you're leaving the convention in a rough floor fight, does it?
That's why I think there's going to be a big push to make Vice President Harris the nominee per se by much of the party hierarchy. But it remains to be seen if that's what's going to happen. This has never happened before. It's one of the few times that I guess this LBJ dropped out that you're going to have a convention decide the nominee.
And just hit it one more time here. The reason, why wouldn't Democrats just coalesce around Kamala Harris? The clock's ticking here. There's not much time left before the convention. Why not just get behind her?
There's a perception among some Democrats as well as the general voting public that Kamala Harris cannot beat Donald Trump and that she doesn't really have a big record as vice president. I believe people will unite at the end, but there is still some hesitancy from some elements in the Democratic Party whether Kamala Harris is the best candidate to beat Donald Trump in November.
And Republicans have already started the lines too, but transparency is going to be a big deal on both sides here, right? For Democrats and Republicans.
I mean, we're in uncharted waters. This is the first time we're seeing, a presidential candidate who's running for reelection after losing one, who's been indicted and been shot at, and now is coming out against a nominee that is going to be literally nominated 3 months before the election.
And then the last thing I was going to ask you, Domingo, is about the money here too. You need money to run. Where does the money go in this? Are donors, bundlers sitting on the sidelines waiting for this thing to hash out, or are they going to get behind somebody?
Well, Kamala Harris would be able to take all the money from Biden's campaign and use it for hers. Any other nominee would have to start from scratch. So that is a big hurdle for anybody trying to remove Kamala Harris as the not Democratic nominee. They would have to start from scratch. And Trump has like $170, $180 million already in the bank. That's a lot of money to raise.
Yeah, indeed. So what else can you think of that we're going to be watching for in the next 72 hours? Anything else?
I think we need to see if the Democratic Party leadership and potential candidates coalesce around Vice President Harris, or if there's a hesitancy to do so, and that could lead to a very dramatic Democratic convention in August in Chicago.
Let me ask you the basic question out of the gate. Do you expect any other candidates besides the vice president to be up for consideration by Democrats?
No, I've not heard that to this point, but we're also talking about the president of the United States. So I would imagine that there may be another candidate or so who joins.
And the big question is, what happens to the delegates here? And from everything I've seen so far, President Biden has not released his delegates yet. So what does that mean at a convention? Are the delegates able to vote for whomever they'd want to, or is he still in control of them?
Look, I've not gotten that guidance just yet. The chairman, Hinojosa, Gilberto Hinojosa, the chair of the Texas Democratic Party, is going to be leading our delegation. And I'm going to speak to him in just a few minutes about what that process looks like. But I would imagine that the fact that the president has endorsed Vice President Biden, his delegates will soon follow. But also in Dallas County, I want to circle up with our delegates here just to make sure that we are all on the same page about the process and know what our next steps are.
What kind of questions are Texas? Let me ask you that again. What kind of questions are Dallas Democrats asking you right now?
Well, I mean, they want to know the process, right? We want to make sure that it's going to be transparent, that everybody will have a fair access to view this process play out, right? So from the voter perspective, but then also from the delegate perspective as well. Want to make sure that it's going to be an open, fair, and transparent process.
And as far as actually nominating the whomever that might be, the Democratic presidential nominee, do you think that we're headed for an open convention where the delegates will decide?
That's possible. And, we're excited. 41 delegates from Dallas County are excited to go to Chicago to the DA and make history. Look, we're in unprecedented times knowing what we're up against on the opposite side of the aisle. right? And so I think President Trump has shown us exactly what he's ready to do on day one. And so for Democrats, it's time for us to really get serious about our next steps, and then also keep doing the work that we were elected to do.
Clock is clearly ticking on Democrats right now. 5 weeks until the nominating convention. Can the party get settled on someone in that time?
Absolutely. I think we can. And you know, in this process, it will play out that we have a number of individuals who are very sorry. Can I start that over?
Take two. Yes, sir.
Sure. In this process, it will play out that we have a number of individuals, candidates, potential candidates, just electeds in general, who are capable of being the president of the United States, right? Namely, Vice President Kamala Harris. So we'll see the bench, if you will, that the Democrats have, and people are excited to hear new voices come to the stage. And so I think that's what we'll see in the next few days.
When you say new voices come to the stage, you think we're going to have other candidates besides the vice president potentially on the ticket?
What I could only imagine that you will, right? There's been a number of people who have been circling the wagons and who've been making their tours and their stops. Right now, Vice President Harris is the only one who has shown her interest and said that she plans to run with the president's endorsement. But I can only imagine that there may be others who join the race. We're going to hold out to see exactly who that is and when that happens. But right now, we're talking to our delegates. We're talking to voters to hear what they want us to do in the next steps as we head to the DNC.
Kardal, how big of a deal is this right now?
This is a very big deal. This is unprecedented, right? Someone who has this type of legacy and legislative body of work. President Joe Biden has delivered for the American people for over 50 years, and to see someone not seek reelection, this is very unprecedented. This is different for us. You know, we've already gone through a primary, so we weren't expecting to go through another purity test, if you will, this fall. But we're ready. We're up for the task, and I think there are a lot of voices and younger candidates who are ready to run and mount a campaign.
Everyone on the Democratic side that I'm talking to says it's not in the bag yet for the vice president, that she's going to be the nominee. Have you heard that?
Well, look, I mean, we have to go through this. We're at the point now where we have to go through a process. Just a few months ago during the primary, people voted for the Biden-Harris ticket, right? And that's where we were. We were intently focused on delivering for them and getting them across the finish line. Now we have to pivot and go to a new direction. President Biden used the word passing the torch. And so now we need to see how we're going to exactly pass the torch and how we're going to go through this process in Chicago.
Do you think you'll have some Dallas delegates who might not want to vote for the vice president?
I'm not sure. I've not called all of my delegates yet. That's my next order of business, to make sure that I'm getting on the line and talking to all of these delegates to see exactly where they are. We were pretty much in lockstep as far as being Biden delegates going into the convention. Now things have changed a little bit. And so I want to make sure that I'm hearing from them to understand what's going to be our overall game plan as we go into the convention.
What are you watching for the next 72 hours or so?
72 hours, I want to hear the voice of Texans. I want to hear the voice of our delegates who are elected to represent these voters. But then also I want to hear, the president, right? He said he will make an announcement or a statement later in the week. So I want to hear from the president. We've read his press statement, but I want to hear the direction that he would like to see the country go in as well.
All right, Mr. Ambassador, thanks for joining us here. First reaction to what we saw today.
Well, I think we all, over the last few weeks, have seen something like this potentially happening. You know, Joe Biden has had a great administration, I think probably the most successful in the history of the U.S. But we also know that there have, over the last few weeks, been a lot of growing concerns about him as the candidate of the Democratic Party. And I think all of us have the objective of beating and having a candidate that can beat Donald Trump. And I think it needed to be, though, in Joe Biden's time. And I think he and his family obviously had a lot of soul searching and a lot of conversations, which I feel really good about, because that's ultimately what we believe in, and that's a democratic process. And I think he did it internally and listened. And I think he made the decision that he felt was right for him and his family, but also what was right for the party and our country.
When we zoom out and look at the calendar, though, I guess it could happen at a worse time. It could happen, 2 weeks from now. But the clock is ticking on the nomination process here. What are the challenges going forward that you see?
Well, obviously, it's going to be a process that none of us really know. So I think that is the first challenge. But I think what happens is you have some incredibly strong candidates that will put their name as the potential lead of our Democratic Party ticket. Obviously, the front runner is our vice president, and I think Vice President Harris, President Biden has came out and endorsed her. And I do think that she has done a really strong job. I think there has been a lot of leadership that she has given to our nation that has not been publicized. So I do think that she has a great opportunity, obviously, but I also think there's some other amazing candidates that are out there. And so I think we'll just see the process continue to evolve.
Do you think we'll see an open convention in Chicago?
I think it's a strong probability. I mean, I think we don't know what the process looks like over the next few weeks, but I do think that there is a strong probability that we will see an open convention. I think it would be maybe difficult for someone to coalesce the party that quickly. And we're not even sure exactly, or at least I'm not, others that are better at, the actual legal aspects of what happens at this point would understand it better than I do. But I'm not even sure if there is a way that somebody could have the delegates before going into the actual election process. So I do think we'll probably see an open convention with one or two as the main leads that have coalesced their groups around. But the good news is that I think there is a strong bench. I think there is an objective of our party to have a strong ticket. I think they'll have the support of the two previous presidents, actually three, but also of President Biden and Dr. Biden, and I think we'll coalesce as a party behind it. So I know the concern of people is short timing, but I still think that we have plenty of time to show the leadership of what's going to happen.
What other nominees do you expect might be interested in this in the coming weeks here, besides the vice president?
I don't want to speculate. I mean, I think they're in the press. So, Jason, I know you are aware of those names. The reason I don't want to bring them up is because I think there's probably a lot of family conversations happening right now and probably have been happening over the last few weeks, expecting this might be the case. So I would never want to speculate because that is such a personal thing. But I think in the next literally today, in the next 24 hours, you're going to see a lot of names begin to come out to say that they would be interested in the nomination.
And I guess the big question from here is what the delegates do. Since the delegates have already said that, we back Biden, can Biden take them and release them to someone, or are the delegates automatically freed up to decide which candidate they want next?
I wish I could answer that, Jason. I think you might know better than I do, being the political analyst. But I do know that going into the convention, they can shift. I just don't know the legal aspects. I think there's been some speculation that maybe every state has its different laws in place. But I feel very comfortable, and what I do feel comfortable in, that when we go into the convention, even if it is brokered, that there will be a coalescing of the party together, and all the delegates will go eventually to the nominee and whoever the vice presidential ticket will be with that as well.
Republicans are already talking about potential legal challenges to this. Do you see any legal challenges, any legal hurdles that the Democratic Party might have to jump?
I don't think we see that will be the case. I think, with all due respect to the Republican Party, I think they are already bringing up reasons why to say the election, no matter how it turns out, is not going to be a fair and free election. So I think that's just another speaking point and tactic. So will there be legal challenges from the Republican Party when the Democrats win? Absolutely. I mean, this has been set up since the last election. So I think that's just a narrative of American politics now. But when it comes to the Democratic Party, I feel very strongly that we will go into the convention. There won't be legal challenges, and that from that perspective, we will come out with a strong ticket coming out of the party. And I'm more than positive that will be the case.
Are you planning to endorse anyone early on?
No, I mean, right now I support President Biden. He has shown great leadership, and we continue to have a strong administration. I think it shows as well in Vice President Harris, and I think we will continue to focus on the things that have been successful and that we still need to accomplish in this administration. So we've still got many months left, all the way up to January. So I think we have to focus on that. And then going into the convention, obviously there will be a candidate once they all are on the table. that, yes, I think I will come out and endorse someone. But ultimately, whoever that person is, we're 100% behind endorsing at the end, because the ultimate goal is to continue a strong democracy, continue what the Biden-Harris administration has already accomplished, what Barack Obama and Vice President Biden at the time accomplished, and then beating Donald Trump. I mean, I think that is the end of our democracy if we're not able to do that.
These are unprecedented political times, but what kind of challenges do you see ahead for whomever Democrats might nominate?
So I think the challenges are fake news. I think that is the number one thing. I think when we see it, we're right now in the Dominican Republic, and we see it all over the DR. And there's questions that come because of being a former U.S. ambassador that come to me every day. And it's amazing that some of the questions that are just falsehoods that continue, but those are perpetuated. I think that is going to be the challenges for the Democrats, because you're always on, we're not ones to put out fake news. So I think that's the first thing. The second thing is, I think, coalescing around our eventual nominee and then pulling the party together. I think that will happen quickly. But what I will tell you, Jason, today, I have had so many texts, as well as my husband, Bob, and others that we've spoken with, from young people that said they were not going to vote. And I'm not just saying that as a speaking point. I'm saying that truly as that's the first thing I started getting from friends, that my kids are so excited and they're ready to vote, where they weren't going to vote for either of the candidates. And it wasn't, they didn't want Donald Trump to win.
But we don't know who a Democrat is. They're already committing to vote?
They are. I mean, and that's just it, because they didn't want what they considered, two old white guys that they didn't relate to at all. And they didn't like Donald Trump, but they just couldn't engage, whether it is, the conversation around misinformation about Gaza, or whether it is conversations about age and health. Sure. It just wasn't, they didn't have a candidate they felt they could relate to. And so they know no matter who it will be, they want to engage for their first or second time in the democratic process. And so when you see, and I'm being very honest, it's in the double digits of numbers, and these are just my friends. So when you have that, that is an exciting time. And I think you're going to see an excitement coming out of today that will re-engage a whole new group of people. And I think that is exciting for the democratic process, but I think it's also exciting for the Democratic Party. And I think you'll see those in the poll numbers in the next coming weeks.
And just to back up one more time to clarify something here,
Sure.
do you not think that Kamala Harris has this in the bag already as far as a nomination?
I think she obviously has and is the front runner, and I think she's done a great job. I think the question is, during the process, is there others that will coalesce the party behind them? I don't know what that looks like. And of course, we don't even know who those people might be. We can speculate. So I do think if she is the candidate, she's a very strong candidate, but I don't think anybody has it in the bag right now. Once again, this is a democratic process, and our party really believes in that process. And so I think, just as President Biden made the decision, and he made it in his own time, listening to a lot of people, I think our party will do the same thing. There'll be a lot of conversations. There'll be a lot of debates. There'll be a lot of fundraising, and there's going to be a lot of conversations of pulling people to certain people's side. But at the end of the day, I think when we go into the convention, there will be one or two, and I think she definitely will be probably still the front runner. That will be the determining factor going into the convention. And I think we'll see what happens as that convention heads into Chicago.
What are you watching for the next 72 hours?
First, I think we'll be watching to hear what President Biden says, because he will be addressing the nation. And I think that's going to be important, because I think he will continue to show his leadership and define his leadership for the next few months until the presidency is over and the reins are turned over to someone else. The second thing I'll be looking for is, who are the candidates that will be vying for the nomination in Chicago. I think that'll be interesting. And then the third thing is, really seeing how the structure, because it's an unknown to a lot of us, what the fundraising structure looks like. Where does the DNC head? What are, the next steps in just the process itself. And I think for those of us who are very engaged with the Biden administration and previously the Obama administration, and looking forward to the next administration, a lot of those are unknowns right now because we've never had this before. And so I think that will be something that I'll be looking for. And then really, when those candidates are there, what are their key objectives and what is their vision for the nation? And I think that's what the American people will be looking for.
Mr. Ambassador, we appreciate the time, sir. Thank you.
Always, Jason. Have fun in Texas. We'll see you soon. Be back home in a couple of weeks.
First reaction, Congressman, to everything we've seen the past 4 or 5 hours.
I got to tell you, I am so excited to support and see President Biden after everything that he's done, the bipartisan infrastructure bill, the CHIPS Act, the Inflation Reduction Act, all those things hugely for the Dallas-Fort Worth area. Pass the torch to his equally able vice president, Kamala Harris, who, in addition to serving again in a very outstanding way as his vice president, was also the attorney general of the largest state in the union. I'm just, it's incredible to me exactly what Kamala Harris is going to do, what she's already doing to infuse excitement into this ticket. I am still kind of in shock, honestly, to Jason, about everything that has transpired. But man, I got to tell you, I'm excited.
Do you expect any other Democrats to run for the nomination, or does Harris have this locked up?
She has it locked up. Yeah, I don't think there's any question about that. She was already on the ticket. As you know, the vice president does actually have to run for election along with the president. So she was already on the ticket. Again, with us being on the eve of the primary, I don't think that the other candidates that are oftentimes mentioned are going to have the apparatus in place to be able to do anything. And then again, the delegates that were already committed to Joe Biden are overwhelmingly going to go to Kamala Harris. And so
you think the delegates will go to the vice president?
There's no question about that. Yeah, all of those delegates that were committed to Joe Biden will eagerly and anxiously await going over into the Harris camp, because again, it's essentially the same ticket. She was on the ticket with Joe Biden as his running mate. And so she's just moving up into the presidential nomination slot. And so it's going to be a smooth handoff. Everybody is excited. People are already organizing. There are Zooms that are happening all around the Metroplex right now on different ways that people can get involved. I've never seen anything like this. People are pumped. People are fired up. People are ready to go. And more importantly, people are eager to vote. And so you can't beat that. I'm excited.
Turnout's obviously imperative, but you got to have money to run. Do you think that you're going to have any issue with donors getting on board here?
No issues with donors getting on board. The money that's already been raised for the Biden campaign can easily transfer into her account. Again, it really doesn't even have to transfer because she was already a part of that ticket. And so that money that's been raised will stay with her as the nominee. And I think that some of the donors that had left the ticket, I think that you're going to see them start organizing fundraisers tonight and from here on out until Election Day.
I think is happening inside the Harris campaign right now?
Oh, I'm sure that they're excited, but more importantly, I know that, for instance, that there are Texas delegates that I've heard have already gotten calls from individuals wanting to make sure that they are going to be excited and be supportive. And so
the Harris campaign's already reached out to Texas delegates?
That's my understanding. Yeah, that is my understanding, is that that there have been some delegates that have already been touched, that this campaign has already hit the ground running and that they're ready to go. So yeah, it's exciting times.
And talk about the excitement here a little bit. It seemed like well, it doesn't seem like, I mean, roles have been reversed here. Donald Trump is now the oldest presidential nominee in American history to be on a ticket like this, and the left has a new, younger more invigorating candidate.
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of people talked about the convention in Milwaukee, and they talked about Hulk Hogan and all of that stuff. But I thought that Donald Trump looked tired and it was meandering on, and he was talking. I'm not even sure what he was exactly talking about. He seemed to be sort of just rambling on about some stuff. And of course, he said he wanted to bring the country together, but then he slipped back into his old ways in different parts of the speech. And so I don't know what they're excited about, but as a Democrat, we have to assume that they are going to be excited. But I can tell you that Democrats, as we get ready to head to Chicago, we're going to be even more excited about November 2024. And I look forward to sitting on that platform January 20th, 2025, when I see Kamala Harris raise her right hand and put her hand on that Bible and take the oath of office to be the president of the United States. I'm excited. I think this has just been a great Sunday that we've been blessed with.
Congressman, who would you like to see her select as a vice presidential running mate?
It'd be interesting to see who she chooses as a running mate. I've heard Andy Beshear, of course, the governor of Kentucky. I've heard Shapiro out of Pennsylvania. I've heard his name mentioned. For those of you that are wondering, she obviously can't pick Newsom. I've heard some people reach out to me and say that she ought to pick Newsom, and I have to remind them that Newsom can't be picked because they're both from California, and under the law, that can't happen. And so I wouldn't be surprised if she goes with the governor, maybe someone from the middle of the country or someone that is, good with blue collar workers, good with some of that base that the Democrat is sort of trying to re-engage. I would not be surprised if she picked someone like that. And I'm like everyone, I'm excited about today. I'm eagerly awaiting when she makes the announcement on who her running mate is going to be. I think it's going to be someone that will really excite the base and people will get behind. And I think that she's going to do a good job of choosing a running mate.
Does that happen, do you think, before the convention or at the convention?
I bet you it happens before the convention. I would be surprised if it happened at the convention. Obviously, whoever is the nominee, they're going to have to go through a vetting process, and that's going to take time. And so it's not, I don't think the people should expect it to be next week. But I do think that it will certainly be sometime before the convention starts, even if it's a few days before the convention starts. But it wouldn't surprise me if it even happened beforehand.
And then the last thing I was curious about, what are you going to be watching for? What kind of milestones will you be watching for in the coming days?
I think that the big thing is going to be what sort of voter enthusiasm do we have on the Democratic side? I'm going to be looking for polls that talk about that. I'm also going to want to hear how people are organizing, how people are fundraising, different things of that nature that really show how well a campaign is doing. So, um, I think that those sort of factors and those sort of metrics are what I'm going to be looking for. And again, they're already doing such an amazing job. People are literally already on Zooms talking about how they can get involved and how they can get engaged. And so it's a great day.
Let me ask you this one last thing. As soon as the news broke, what kind of text messages were you getting?
Oh my God. I got so many text messages from friends, from supporters.
What were they
Uh,
saying?
how can I get involved? How can I give? Are you going to Chicago? I think I want to go to Chicago now. Just all sorts of different messages that I've received from people. Couldn't keep up with them. I'm going to have to spend the rest of the evening trying to get caught up on some of these texts and emails and messengers that I've received on my social media to just try to get people as much information as I can because people want to roll up their sleeves and get involved and I can't blame them. Again, this is an exciting day that we've been blessed with as Democrats and I think for our country as well.